What is going on, fellow alchemists? Welcome to Quasi Astrology. I hope you're all doing alright and the world isn't driving you too round the bend. That being said, today we are doing Scorpio Rising. I've been getting some requests on my personal email about Scorpio Rising. How do I interpret it? What is it in your chart? How to represent it in your chart and how to interpret it to get a more accurate type of reading when you're reading your own chart or if you're reading somebody else's. So I initially thought, I was going to make a whole video montage like I did with my Aries Rising video, but there wasn't enough response on that. But if you want to look at it, I really do suggest you go and look at it because it's got a whole lot to do with Mars, and because Mars is a ruler of Scorpio, I really think it'll be a very important video to watch. And I'll just get into this one. So Scorpio Rising, Scorpio as a whole. I used to think there was a lot of obsession about this sign, and the reason why so many videos on so many astrological YouTube channels would always have their Scorpio videos at the top or Pluto videos at the top, because so many people were interested in this sign or interested in this planet and this position, and it just kind of gave a lot of people the kind of preference towards this type of energy. But I've realized and I've come to the conclusion that the majority of people who do get involved in astrology, in particular those who come, and the reason why Scorpio, all the Scorpio movies and Pluto movies and Mars in the 8th house, etc. are so high up on the billboard of popularity is because those are the people that usually have these placements. And that's just the underlying sign of what kind of significance this placement, this sign, Scorpio, has in regards to its prominence in the occult and its prominence in astrology. So that being said, what is Scorpio? What is the sign of Scorpio all about? The sign of Scorpio, as we all know, is based on the constellation of Scorpius. Now, in the ancient times, during the Hermetic period, and even before the Ptolemaic Egypt, or that was the time where Alexandra had passed through, and Alexander the Great in this case, had gone off into India to go and fight in Bactria, and he died as he came back to Babylon. He passed away, and Ptolemy, which was one of his Hellenic Macedonian Greek generals, decided to move into Egypt during the split of Alexander's supposed kingdom. But we can all make an argument that he really didn't set the tone and set the infrastructure to really call it a kingdom. So Ptolemaic Egypt is where we see a lot of the Hellenic influence meshing with the Hermetic nature of ancient Egypt. But even before that, the ancient Egyptians used to see Scorpio as one huge sign. There was no Virgo at that time, and there was no Libra. Scorpio constituted 60 degrees and possibly even more. And over time, what we've seen in regards to the height and the evolution in human consciousness, we've seen the addition of Virgo, and that is why Virgo has a very similar sign to Scorpio. And we've seen the addition of Libra as a means to try and explain a specific stage of integration of energy and a process in which that energy is dealt out in the very cardinal powerful sign of modern day Libra. So that being said, what is Scorpio then? What does Scorpio represent? Well, I always like to touch on the esoteric concepts first before I go into how it relates to the person. Scorpio is all about the initiation of the drop of down the ascending arc. So this is the initiation. This is where the point of the soul, because we come in as the soul on the descending arc and we drop into physical matter. Now, physical matter is at its densest in Capricorn, and Capricorn is a big deal in your natal chart. It's a big deal no matter if you have any prevalent planets in there or whether you don't. Capricorn is a big deal, and it's a bigger deal now given the Great Conjunction, though if you're in tropical astrology, it's happening in Aquarius, though in sidereal astrology, which I lean more towards, you have Capricorn and you have Jupiter and Saturn happening there, but it's a big, big deal. So the reason for Scorpio is Scorpio really showcases the nature of progression, right? Of the soul dropping into physical matter and encasing itself in physical matter. In Theosophy and the Theosophical European schools of thought, remember Theosophy was extracted from Eastern schools, Eastern spirituality, we see Scorpio being attuned or brought towards the initial sin, in that sense, that we dropped into physical matter, we've encased ourselves in physical matter, and through that process we are trying to escape physical matter. But we find our densest point in Capricorn, but Scorpio is where we finally realize that we are now encased in physical matter, Whereas in Virgo, we start the process. That is why Virgo's M, if you look at the symbol of Virgo, the M kind of swoons inwards, and that is the trying to symbolize the soul's progression into matter. And in Scorpio, you see it come out, and that's the soul's progression out of matter. So now we're starting the process of now trying to break away from matter, breaking away from the descending arc, breaking away from the lower plane D in Theosophy, which is all about Earth, which is about the fixed nature, the cardinal Earth sign, everything like that, everything that's attributed to physical molecular matter. And so we're breaking away from the 666, the 6 electrons, 6 protons, 6 neutrons, the mark of carbon, the periodic mark of carbon, which is the mark of all carbon-based life forms. So now we're trying to move away and ascend up the ascending arc into spirit, but we are only to start to do that process in Capricorn, and that is why it's so important. So Scorpio is all about the alchemical process of starting the transmutation of lead into gold. Now again, before Hermetic and Ptolemaic Egypt, ancient Egyptians used to claim that lead was the gold of the earth. It was extracted from the earth, and lead was the real gold, not the gold we understand it's today. That's the metallic gold of value. But lead was the real gold. And the reason they did this, I believe, is because they used a metaphor. The metaphor was simple, that lead was a combination of mercury, which was thought, and gold, which was spirit. And the whole purpose was to use thought, mercury, to separate from the spirit, gold. So lead is the gold of the earth. And so in Scorpio, you start this process. So in Scorpio, we see the Sheelaship, the adeptship. You trying to become an adept. You're trying to become an adept in that area. And it's a very, very tumultuous period. Scorpio is a very tumultuous sign. Anyone who tries to brush over Scorpio and say people from this place are just a bit emo or a bit, a bit misunderstood are completely wrong. Scorpio is a very, very tumultuous sign. In fact, it rules over and it exhibits the nature of the fourth ray in esoteric astrology. If you don't know what the rays are, I really suggest you go and look that up. The esoteric rays of astrology, there's 7. The fourth ray is called harmony through conflict. And the best way to understand this is the labors of Hercules. Hercules, during his period, had to go through 12 labors in order for him to ascend, right? And so in these 12 labors, one of them, he fights the Hydra. So Hercules couldn't defeat the Hydra. And in short, he eventually realized that the whole purpose was to surrender to the Hydra and to lift up the Hydra into the sun's light, so that the sun's light could irradiate and dissipate all of the illusionary fears and heads of the Hydra and only reveal the real fear, the real source of the problem. And Hercules cut that off. But he only got there once he surrendered. And that is what the story is about Scorpio. It's harmony through conflict, the fourth ray. This is so important and so vital to understand whenever you're addressing Scorpio, whether it's Scorpio Rising, Scorpio Sun, Moon in Scorpio, any of the prominent placements, or any placement for that matter, there's a serious role of harmony through conflict. There's something you need to learn here. And that's why Mars rules over this part of the chart. I mean, this part of the sign, because it is, there's a misunderstanding, I feel, that a lot of people look at Aries and they think Aries not only represents the soldier, but it also represents the military. But that is completely wrong. Aries represents the soldier. That's why it's represented by a ram. The ram has that forward cardinal nature, that forward, go forward. You know what I mean? That initial spark, persevere no matter what. The ram, the helmet, the soldier. But when you go to Scorpio, you see the military itself. You see the claws of Scorpio, the armor of Scorpio, and then the stinger and the fixed water nature. You have to be like water, as Bruce Lee once said. You become the glass. Water becomes the glass. It becomes and flows over the rock. You know what I mean? And so when you have that kind of case, you look at Scorpio as representing the military. And the reason for that is because it's fixed, it's sustained, it's water, and it's about fighting through conflict. Fighting through conflict. The fourth ray, harmony through conflict. So you fight, and through that, you finally surrender and find the harmony that you desire. So I just needed to really touch on that for all people who are trying to understand what Scorpio Rising means in your natal chart. So if you're still with me, and you still want to know what Scorpio Rising means for a lot of people, let's get into that one right now. So Scorpio Rising, putting aside what I've just mentioned about Scorpio as a sign, Scorpio Rising can be quite tumultuous for anyone who's really involved. Now, I make an argument here, and this might trigger a lot of people if you're still watching this far, that a lot of the majority of people who are, especially if you're about 0 degrees to about 15 degrees Scorpio, of Scorpio rising, if that's where your rising sits in the 0 to 15 degrees, a lot of the time you're actually a Libra rising, especially when you consider sidereal astrology. Remember, sidereal astrology takes the exact position of the rising and doesn't base it on the cardinal points being the equinoxes. So tropical astrology is based on the equinoxes, our position here on Earth, whereas sidereal astrology is based on the actual positions. So when a lot of people come in with Scorpio rising, there is a big chance that you might have your rising actually sitting in Libra. But a lot of people who, for example, I'll make an example, unless you're using the deacons, which I've made a video on how to use them and how to understand them, so you could check it out up there. Unless you're using deacons to really get an accurate take on tropical astrology, because I believe that's the only way to really get an accurate telling of what's going on in your tropical chart. Otherwise, I always suggest learning Vedic astrology. You know, you're not going to be able to truly understand where your rising sits. But that being said, you might have Pluto in the first house if you're part of that generation, or you might have a very Plutonic or Mars-dominated type of chart, which could also have its kind of influence on feeling and experiencing the Scorpio rising effects, and why you might relate a lot to Scorpio rising. But that being said, Scorpio rising people, you are currently undertaking the most tumultuous part of that chart, of our trajectory through the constellations. All right, you are taking on the most immense conflict, the most immense battle you could possibly take on. This is the point where you are finding your liberation. You are striving towards the spiritual liberation, the spiritual emancipation, but you have to fight away all of the baser animalistic instincts. And this is why Scorpio is a fixed sign, why we talk about mounting the fixed cross of matter. Once you're able to mount the fixed cross, which you might hear in the more esoteric circles of astrology, people mean, and what they mean by that is that you need to mount your most primal and animalistic nature. You need to be beyond that. You need to strive above that. You need to dominate it yourself, and you need to see above it. And through that, you find your exaltation point. You find your point of progression. You find your ability to step away from the descending nature of the arc into the higher initiations in Capricorn, and you finally find yourself rising up into Aquarius and Pisces, where Pisces, we see the evolution and involution, and we see the escape. This is the sign that represented Jesus Christ, one of the main spiritual guides and spiritual masters of our time. And now we're in the Aquarius age, and there's a different one currently present. So what I want you to take away from all of this is the immense importance of being born with Scorpio rising. Remember, the rising, the first house, the ascendant, is the most vital part in your chart. Without the first house, without the rising, without the ascendant, we wouldn't be able to function. We are the ascendant. Everything we are, all the energies that come through our chart, all the energies that are behind us in the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, etc., all of those emit themselves through the first house. The first house is the container, and everything else is inside. That is why the first house is so important. That is why Scorpio rising is the lesson here. It's about harmony through conflict. The fourth ray. So keep in mind that it is going to be tumultuous. It is going to be awe-inspiring. It is going to transform you. It is going to break you down. It is going to destroy you. But it's going to lift you up if you're able to do the work. If you have Mars here, you're pretty gifted. If you have Pluto here, which is the higher octave of Mars, you're also pretty gifted in regards to having this placement, because then you're able to work with that energy and power through with that very martial and soldier-like directional energy, that cardinal energy that you have in Aries, which is about the first ray of willpower, and pushing through all the tumultuous periods and all the tumultuous consequences that you will definitely find in Scorpio rising. So fellow alchemists, I hope you really enjoyed that one. That was my take on Scorpio rising and the sign of Scorpio. I hope it was alright, and I hope you got something out of it. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe, drop a like down below, drop into the comment section down below, tell us where you fit in. Do you think you're Scorpio Rising? Do you find yourself actually leaning more towards Libra Rising if you believe in the sidereal explanation of this? And what's the deal? But more importantly, take very good care of yourself, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.